Okay, thank you, Nicholas. As he said, my name is Lindy, and I am a certified fertility care practitioner and a fertility care educator. I am based in Concordia, but I teach couples and women all around the Salina Diocese and even beyond virtually. You might be wondering, what is fertility appreciation or fertility care? And it is a method of natural family planning. And you might be wondering, well, what does that have to do with a pro-life exposition? And how does that relate to pro-life issues? So I would begin by saying whether we look at it from a faith standpoint or a scientific and biological standpoint, we are all fearfully and wonderfully made, as Gina, put together with the theme of this event today. And I really think that when we look at abortion and the issue of abortion and maybe a root cause and where even that inclination towards abortion begins in our hearts is with the appreciation or lack of an appreciation for the gift of fertility. Our fertility, male and female, is indeed a gift given to us by God. It's an invitation by Him to be co-creators with Him. And when we lack that appreciation for fertility and that reverence of that ability to create new life, then that leads our hearts down the path towards abortion. And actually, before abortion was legalized and the issue that it has become today, the other issue was developing prior to that, and that was of contraception and making it widely available to women and couples in the 50s and the 60s. And if you actually would plot the availability of contraception on a graph, it would be this dramatic uphill slope. And then if you would take a few years later, as abortion became available, and then you start plotting the availability of abortion, the breakdown of family, divorce, single-parent homes, infidelity, pornography, theft, men in prison, all of these things that we know are wrong with our society that are broken, it's actually quite dramatic and interesting to see that that line parallels and follows the availability of contraception. So I would suggest that appreciation for the gift of life begins even in our hearts in appreciating our fertility, which is what brings about life. And so through the Creighton Model Fertility Care System, but also all of the methods that teach an appreciation for fertility and understanding that, seeing it as a gift, we are fostering the very beginning of a pro-life heart and an appreciation for that gift from God. It's not always easy, though. In the natural family planning world, everybody talks about it as this beautiful and amazing thing that can bless your marriage and is just so wonderful. But the reality is, it is hard to surrender your fertility to God's plan and design sometimes. Not always. Sometimes it can be very easy, but it can be challenging and scary. But like the scripture said today at Mass, we are to have no anxieties. God is someone who can never be outdone in generosity. He is someone that we can trust with any aspect of our life, even our fertility, because it was designed by Him for a purpose. We have a culture that really treats fertility as a disease. And you might be wondering what I mean and how would I come to that conclusion? Well, I want you to think about the last time you went to the doctor, whether it was because you were sick or maybe it was just an annual checkup. If your doctor had said, I think it would be all right if we diminished your hearing a little. Like, maybe you just don't really need that. You don't need to hear everybody in your life. Let's be closed off to that. I want to give you a medication that's going to block your hearing. You probably would have left the clinic that day and never go back to that physician. Or if he did that with any other system in your body, you would think this physician is crazy. But women and men and couples go to their doctors all the time and say, I have this system in my body and I don't want it to work. And I want you to give me something to keep it from working properly. And that's our fertility, our reproductive system. We don't do that with any other part of our body. But because of the way we have been culturally conditioned to see fertility as a problem, as something that maybe we just want to put it on the shelf and use it when we're ready, we do that. And that has changed our hearts into recognizing children as the supreme gift and blessing that they are. And we've then had all these years in society of suppressing our fertility, treating it like a disease, rejecting it, and it has impacted us socially, it has impacted us emotionally, and even economically in worlds and countries, including the United States, that are not reproducing at a rate able to sustain itself. And so it's so important. And if you want to take all of the moral issues out of it, even biologically, it's harming us. What most people don't realize is that, particularly for a woman, her fertility is intertwined with nearly every other system she has in her body. So a lot of times the suppression of fertility is going to be done through the woman's body, because she's the one who can conceive a pregnancy, right? Very, very rarely, most often, the man is not using any form of contraception. When a woman suppresses her fertility, not only is she diminishing and harming her reproductive system, the connection that it has with multiple other body systems are impeded, they're interrupted and impacted. And so through the Creighton Model Fertility Care System, we are helping women not just chart their cycles for family planning purposes to achieve or avoid a pregnancy, which is a very beautiful and important part of what we do, but we're also helping women and couples chart the signs, the biomarkers that her body gives her. It's like a vital sign. We go get our vitals done, our temperature, our blood pressure, all of those things. And for a woman, these vital signs and biomarkers of her body are just as important. When we chart those, we can tell when something's not quite right very quickly. And that is going to indicate not just her reproductive system, but that connection between other body systems. And you might be wondering, well, what could that be? Well, if a woman's hormones are not working properly, her female reproductive hormones, she's at greater risk for heart disease. She's at greater risk for osteoporosis. She's at greater risk for various cancers. Her endocrine system can't work properly. Her thyroid system will struggle to function. And so there's this huge connection between all of those body systems that for a woman is very much so connected to her reproductive health as well. And anytime we hinder that, we're going to hinder all of those other things. But maybe there are women who are like, well, I would never use birth control. I would never suppress my fertility, because they do see it as a gift. But they may not understand the beautiful connection that God put into her body when he designed her, that core central part of who she is as a woman, that ability to enter into motherhood, she may not know how connected it is to the rest of her body. And so even for women that maybe aren't considering suppressing their fertility, through Creighton Model, we can work with them to fully appreciate. They may not already appreciate, but have no idea the magnitude to which God put in her this beautiful design, that her fertility is so connected to every other part of who she is. And so through fertility appreciation, we are looking at those vital signs and those biomarkers to help women have optimal health in all ways. And when the woman has optimal good health, that's going to help the rest of the family as well, right? When mom's well taken care of, so's everybody else. Or when any woman is feeling at her best, everyone around her is going to be feeling better as well. And so it's so important that we take care of that. But another thing about fertility and appreciating that it's a gift is that men and women, by ourselves, we're all infertile. It's the combined fertility of a man and a woman that allows them to be co-creators with God. And that combined fertility can't ever be diminished, that cooperation and that union between a man and a woman in creating new life. Sometimes we think and we take for granted pregnancy. That, yeah, it happens, and we never, sometimes we fail to recognize the beautiful, miraculous thing that happened every time a human being is conceived. And both from the male standpoint and from the woman's standpoint, there are so many things that have to happen correctly, that have to be in good health and good function for a new life to be created. It's never, ever an accident. It's always a beautiful miracle from the spiritual standpoint, but even from a physical and biological standpoint, it is amazing because we are so fearfully and wonderfully made. As I mentioned, I teach the Creighton Model Fertility Care System, and sometimes people just think that is something that's for married couples. But my youngest client has been 12 years old when she started with me charting because she had some issues as her female reproductive system was kind of maturing, and it was impacting her overall health. So you don't have to be married, and you don't have to be you don't have to be seeking family planning. Fertility appreciation and fertility care is about optimizing your female reproductive health. But we also work with couples in that family planning aspect to appreciate God's design for marriage in that way. I just want to share, a couple of things as far as the type of people that have benefited from fertility care. So as I mentioned, I had started, my youngest client was 12 years old, and working with her as she is over the years, developed, we've been able to address the health issues that she was having. And sometimes there are the obvious health issues, and then there are subtle things that are underlying that maybe women don't even realize they're experiencing and how they don't feel good. And so sometimes when someone comes to me with an obvious, I have really bad cramping or really bad pain, or things are just really irregular, we can take care of that. That's pretty obvious. But as we take care of those issues, then she feels better emotionally as well, because something that most people don't realize is that our hormones don't just impact us physically, they impact us emotionally and mentally as well. And so I've worked with a lot of women with that mental aspect as well, and through the journey of many reproductive years. So I've had a client that I started teaching when she was just a young college student, who really truly wasn't having problems, she didn't think, but she just was interested, like, this is fascinating, and I know I want to get married someday, so I want to learn how my body works. But as she started charting, she had no idea that what she was experiencing in her cycles was not normal. Because if it's what you always have, you assume it's normal, right? So we were able to identify abnormalities in her cycle and get her connected with a physician to start treating those and making those better. And as she started to feel better, she then realized how lousy she felt before. And then I had the joy of the follow-up where she told me she was now engaged. So then our teaching changes as we incorporate her fiance into that follow-up session, and we're going to talk about looking at her fertility in an even bigger picture with new uses and helping her fiance to appreciate how wonderfully she was designed and understanding her at an entirely different level, and for her then to appreciate how his fertility comes into, her life and their relationship that they're going to build together. And in the early days of their marriage, they had determined that they weren't quite ready for a pregnancy for various reasons, and so they used the system to avoid a pregnancy for a little while. But then God worked on their heart, helped them trust Him, and helped them realize it was time to welcome a child into their life. So then I had the follow-up where they got to share with me that they were pregnant, which sometimes I know before they do, because I can tell by their chart. So that's always fun. But what was really beautiful about this couple is the work we had done prior to her even being married helped her fertility be in better health so that she could have a safe and healthy pregnancy, because the signs that showed up in her chart before she was ever engaged indicated that she would be at high risk for miscarriage. But working with me during all of that time and getting her health restored allowed her to enter into this pregnancy without any risks, because it was already addressed. After pregnancy, after that baby was born and I was working with that couple, one of the very important things we do when working with a woman postpartum is to say, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Are you getting sleep? Are you feeling like the emotional ups and downs of the postpartum period? And for every woman, there's going to be a little bit of that. The thing about postpartum is that our bodies during pregnancy went through this time of just an abundance of hormones that make us feel wonderful. And then right after that baby's born, they just disappear, and not gradually. And so in the postpartum time, the body is craving what it once had, and it can be a very hard transition time. For some women, it can push through and the body picks up and begins functioning again. And other women, they need a little help. And I could tell in the little things that this woman was saying through our follow-up that she was struggling, but she was afraid to say she was struggling. Because for a lot of women, that postpartum depression can make them feel shameful. There should be no shame in that, but it happens. And so by asking a few pointed questions and letting her know this was an okay place to admit, I'm not exactly loving this whole motherhood thing and how I feel right now, that it was okay to talk about that. She opened up and shared, oh, okay, you know what? I'm in a pretty bad spot. I don't feel well. And the amazing thing about appreciating how God designed our bodies and getting it connected from the right angle, someone who appreciates your fertility instead of wanting to just put a Band-Aid on it and move on, is that it took one phone call to what we call a naprotechnology physician, someone who's going to appreciate her fertility and want to take care of it. One phone call and one injection of this amazing hormone called progesterone. And it was like a night and day difference. It was a life-saving difference for her and her motherhood and her relationship with her husband to restore her body and her fertility to the help that it needed. Now that couple's continuing on through their life. And so that's just kind of one story with a young couple that understanding and appreciating the gift of fertility, protecting it, nourishing it, taking care of it, can have on our life. And it's the beautiful work that we're blessed to do through fertility care. We work with a lot of couples that struggle with infertility as well, in helping them to restore their fertility and their health so that they can achieve a pregnancy in a very safe and healthy way, and in a way that still respects God's design and how life should be created. One of my most frustrating things in life is the women and the couples that have been through the artificial reproductive system and how they're treated as they go through that process in that field of medicine. One with such a lack of compassion and just a dismissal of the individual human person. And so they come so tired and defeated and discouraged. And so it's so painful to see that sometimes, but God is good. And I had someone ask me today, like, what's our success rate with infertility? Well, the most difficult of difficult cases, we have an up to 80% effectiveness rate in helping those couples that have been told by every other physician in their life that you'll never get pregnant naturally. But God is good, and when you respect His design and you work cooperatively with it, for a lot of couples you can. And then those couples that can't conceive, we don't always consider that a failure, because a lot of times those couples come into a different journey of understanding how their life can still bear life and bear fruit in other ways, whether it just be in spiritual parenthood to other people in their community or through adoption. So it's not even a failure if you can't achieve a pregnancy. We're helping you in that journey and that path that God has you on, while always respecting the gift of fertility. So, like I said, I am a fertility care practitioner. I'm also what's called a fertility care educator, which means I can train other practitioners. And I'm looking forward to doing that for the first time in March. If there's anyone who thinks, I would really like to bring this good news to other people, then we have a way that you can do that. It's not easy, but usually God's calls aren't exactly easy. So if you're interested in learning more about fertility care and appreciation as someone who maybe wants to learn to chart, or maybe you want to help bring this to other people, I myself am a practitioner that practices out of Concordia, and I travel and I see people virtually, but we have 8 other women in our diocese all around the area who do the same thing and love working with women and couples of all ages. We have a booth over there where you can come get more information. So thank you for your time today.